my name is Frances Bench, and I'm going to introduce the next panel on religion. I'm going to start with Dave Baskin. He is an associate professor of psychology, and he has taught at Delta College since 1995. He teaches honors general psychology, applied psychology, and child psychology. He has also taught e-learning community classes along with Composition 1 and Intro to American Film. He has served as the faculty advisor to Phi Theta Kappa for 8 years now. He thinks that the only thing that really qualifies him to talk about diversity is that he is one of the few Jewish members on staff here at Delta College. He also serves on the board for Congregation Beth El in Saginaw. I'm also going to introduce a married couple, Amy and Amor. I do not have credentials on them, however their story is fascinating and you're going to have to watch the videos to hear more about them. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
And Holly Van Buren, who is a former Delta student. She was in our honors program. That was a while ago. I'll let her tell maybe how long. So I don't know, were you and Jerry contemporaries in the honors program?
Yes, we were.
Awesome. And they've both gone on to bigger and better things. And then this is her husband, Amor. And he is a Delta student currently still?
Yep.
Okay.
I
So,
was at the class last night, actually.
did you? And at least you don't conflict this time, so you can be here the whole time.
Well, I'm taking a speech class, public speaking, so that helps.
Awesome.
This is like exercise for that. So
Okay, awesome.
I really need this.
Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we're going to turn it back over to maybe Dave, and we'll just kind of, what we do, Dave, is just kind of give him a little bit of your story. It's all about based on kind of storytelling, and we're here to talk about blending religions and culture, and so you can take it from there. If you want to do 2 minutes, that's fine, and then move on, and then we'll open it up to questions. If you want to do 20 minutes.
I'm a teacher. You shouldn't give me that
I
kind
know.
of
I'm giving you 3. Okay.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jewish, born Jewish, raised Jewish by Jewish parents. And that said, though, after I was bar mitzvahed at the age of 13, typical age of bar mitzvah, I really kind of felt like I had enough at that point. Bar mitzvah is kind of a time it's supposed to mark your entry into adulthood and kind of the beginning of being part of Jewish culture in a sense. For me, though, I took it as an opportunity to avoid going to Hebrew school and Sunday school and temple as much as I could. And my mom, for the most part, was okay with that. She didn't love it, but she was okay with it. So religion didn't really play a huge role in my life after about the age of 13. Until I wound up meeting my now wife. Her name is Kelly, and she came into my life in 1991. We met, and as we started getting more serious in our relationship, she was asking me about my religion, and she wanted to know why it's not important to me and why I believed what I did. And she's a very curious individual, a very bright individual also. And so she took the time to learn more about Judaism, and eventually we got engaged. Actually, I don't know if you knew this, Charisse, we got engaged in a Delta classroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was at Bowling Green.
We met at Bowling Green in '91. We got engaged here in 1995 in a Delta classroom, right at the end of an 8 a.m. class.
There is too much going on in these classes.
So she was not a student of mine, I swear. So we got engaged, and as we were working towards planning our marriage, and she was more interested in Judaism, she was reading up more about it, and we were talking about our wedding plans, and she actually decided to convert to Judaism. My wife was raised by parents who were Lutheran and Methodist, and religiously she was kind of a little bit adrift also, kind of like I was. I knew I was Jewish, but it didn't have a whole lot of significance or meaning to me. So she was learning more about it, and she actually made efforts to convert to Judaism. This was something I never asked her to do. I never forced it upon her, but she was interested. She liked what our religion stood for, and so she started taking classes in Judaism with the plans of converting. And the plan was to have her convert just a couple of months before we got married, then we would get married in a temple and take it from there. And so I was encouraging of my then fiance. I thought it was great that she wanted to accept my religion. I thought that was wonderful, and so she started taking classes, and her rabbi encouraged her to start going to temple services, which was a perfectly reasonable request. Since she was going, she made the perfectly reasonable request of me that I go with her. I was not a real big fan of this idea, which is really strange. So all of a sudden now she's more interested in my religion than I am. I agreed to go with her, and what I found was I had a real connection with going back to temple really for the first time as an adult. And I really liked the services, and I liked being part of Jewish culture, and I liked connecting with other Jews. My wife converted in the Detroit area, and so we did, that was great. She did convert, we got married in a temple, and let's see, where from there? Eventually, when she moved up here, we became members of a temple in Flint. We went there for a while until about the time my daughter was born, about 5.5 years ago. Because at that time, the temple there was switching rabbis, they were getting a new one, and it was becoming more of a hassle, quite frankly, to drive about 45 minutes to an hour for services on a weekly basis. We were meeting people each week, but we weren't really having that many connections. And some of you can maybe relate, for those of you who commute a bit to get here. And then just a few years ago, some individuals in town started up a temple in Saginaw, and we became very active parts of it. And I never would have believed it, but I'm now a board member on our temple. And it's been wonderful. I've made a lot of great connections, so I really feel good about kind of connecting, really for the first time, with my religion, understanding it better. And we typically say prayers before meals, and we celebrate the Sabbath Friday nights, and we try to go to temple, and our daughter's very involved also. So that's kind of where I've taken my journey, and we'll probably do questions later, and I can talk more about how our families took all of this and how they responded, and maybe give my wife's side of the story a little more attention, but that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Great, thanks. That was a great introduction. And you made it in 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, running over. Like I said, I'm a teacher.
Great, thanks, Dave.
I was raised with my mom's side of the family, which is Polish Catholic from the south end of Bay City, and my dad's side of the family, which is Seventh-day Adventist, which are two completely different religious belief systems. When I was at Delta, I went to Japan as an exchange student, and that was in the early 90s, I think. I just simply can't remember. It's not like any trauma about the date. It was a while ago, AJ. And got exposed to a lot of Buddhist belief systems, although in Japan, at least the part of it that I was in, Buddhism was more of a cultural thing than a spiritual thing. It was kind of, like the way that Catholics sometimes cross themselves without really understanding the meaning, or even, it's just kind of habit. And a lot of the practice of Buddhist beliefs and attending at, temples and different things like that is more just kind of like reflexively crossing yourself. When I came back to the States, I went to a Seventh-day Adventist college, not because I cared about it being Seventh-day Adventist, but because I liked the school. It was small. My classes were 8 to 10 people. I was on a first-name basis with all the professors of the college. It was just a nice atmosphere. But through that, I ended up going overseas to do international aid work. I worked first in Albania, which is a lot of different religions, because that part of the world has had a lot of different people going through it, and they're fairly pragmatic about religion. So if you have something I want, you say you want me to be Lutheran, I'm Lutheran, and if you have something I want, you want me to be Catholic, I'm Catholic. They have a very, very practical approach to religion in Albania. And then after things died down in Kosovo, which is where I met my husband, I worked up there, and most Kosovo Albanians are Muslim by affiliation, combined with Serbians who are generally Serbian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox. And because there'd recently been a war there, people were a little bit more hanging on to their religious beliefs than maybe we saw in Albania. And that's where I met the stealth Muslim that's sitting beside me. I just don't even know what our daughter's going to be raised. She's going to be raised either the most open-minded person in the world about religion or the most confused child that ever existed, because there's just all this stuff that's out there. I'm not practicing anything at this point. I attend church sometimes because my family goes to various church functions. I go to church sometimes with my mom for Catholic holidays. I grew up going to the Seventh-day Adventist church, and I still go there with my dad on and off. If my husband actually wanted to practice his faith system, I suppose I'd go along with him. But I'm kind of a nothing. I believe a lot of things are possible. That was less than 4.5 minutes.
That was, and I'm just teasing anyways.
That was
You did a great job, thanks.
This is going to take a while. Do you have enough tape in there? Hello, everyone. My name is Amor Mwajiri. I'm Muslim, Albanian. Actually, this was Albanian Muslim. Albanian through nationality, and Albanians actually we have three different religions: Muslim, Catholic, and Orthodox. Because the strategic position of Albania, it's in the border with Serbia and Greece, Serbia north and Greece south, which are Orthodox, and then you have Italy in the west side, which are Catholic, and it's a lot of influence for them. And we also were occupied by them in World War II, and then the Muslim religion came through Turkey. It was because we were occupied by Turkey for 400 years. Osman Otopi, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I don't know how actually it's in English. But we were occupied by them for 400 years, so that's how we got the Muslim religion. And here, there is not much for Muslims, as you all know. Right now, it's like, but I'm not fanatic. I can tell you truly that in 30, well, I got here 3 years ago, so for 30 years of my life, I maybe attend to Muslim mosque probably twice, maybe 3 times, and that was for some occasion, you know.
And be honest.
Yeah. Be honest.
The earliest memory he has of attendance is getting kicked out for trying to vandalize it with his friends when he was about 10.
Well, yeah. Well, when we were kids, we used to go to mosque because we have this mosque in our neighborhood, and they take their shoes off when they go to pray. So we used to go and switch the shoes or tie them together. So that was one of the things. As a kid, you do that. And like I said, when you mentioned bar mitzvah, we do that too. We call it sunat, and I got that when I was in 3rd grade in primary school. Really young, and I tried to escape, to run away. Couldn't. They got me.
The
Circumcised thing.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh,
I
so
thought
that's
that.
different.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, very
Sorry.
No, not 13, no.
Okay. I thought that's
7 days.
Oh, okay.
No,
Progress.
that's okay. You guys
That's a
should
progress.
communicate what the
Hey.
difference is, because we'll all learn from that. So
Yeah.
you tell him what bar mitzvah in a nutshell really means, and then you can tell him what you were talking about.
No, I thought bar mitzvah is when you get circumcised and stuff.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
What
No,
the-
bar mitzvah is when you turn 13, and it's kind of your introduction into adult male Jewish
Oh, okay,
culture.
I didn't
And then
know
there's
that.
bat mitzvah for women. Circumcision is called a bris, and that happens when boys in the Jewish
Run
culture
away.
are 7 days old. Yeah, when they can't run away.
No, I tried to run, to be honest with you. I tried to
Yeah.
escape
The
because
first time I heard they did that at 7 or 8 years old, I'm thinking, and they let them?
No, because I saw my brother. He was before me, and when I saw what they did to him, I ran.
Now, how do they set this up? Is this ceremonial? So you actually
Yeah.
stand in line until, like,
It's a big
first
thing.
Holy Communion, you stand in line until it's your turn, you go up
Yep.
there. So you're watching
Don't
the
they do
person
it in the
before
home?
you get cut?
Amor, don't
Yeah.
they do it in the home?
They do it. Well, they do it in the hospital or they do it in home. Traditionally, they do it at home because there are, family members and stuff like that, and usually they hold the kids. You have two strong
Yeah,
men
right.
that they hold from your arm, and
People
yeah.
that love you.
Oh yeah, that's how it is. And depends how many kids you have in the family, and they do like a party after that where they invite
That is very
200
similar, except it's 7
200
days.
to 500 people probably. They make the big party with dinner and stuff like that. So it costs a lot of money. So it's a big thing.
But you get money in return, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing is that
Time out, guys. It's not all about money and the parties. What is which I know, that's the fun part. But the spiritual part of doing that is about what? What's the meaning
getting
behind
in
it?
manhood, like
Okay,
he said.
all right,
From
so it's the
kid.
If you
Okay, I
can
got
take
Yeah, but
that, you're
but it depends what.
What about the clinical aspect? Is that sanitary?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
7,
it's
8
a-
years
yeah,
old,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there's
It's
people
done by-
watching, and you're taking your clothes off.
Oh yeah, you're naked.
Culture's different. The
You're
culture's
naked.
I'm just trying to give
No,
my
no,
head around.
it's done by professional.
So it's
but
clean and
yeah,
sterile.
it's clean and sterile and stuff like that. Yes.
And then they do this to you, and then they tell you to go have cake.
Yeah.
No. Well, no, after you do that, you don't.
I don't think I would want to. Is my
You get
point.
liquor.
You
Yeah.
can't have a cake
No.
because you're in a
Okay.
lot of pain. That's for sure.
But everyone else is celebrating? Or?
Okay. They do this. This get done by a professional
Okay.
nurse or doctor.
So they come to your home.
Yeah, they come to your home
Okay.
with equipment and stuff. That
Okay.
everything get prepared. They do the thing. They throw you in a bed, and then all those people that got invited there, they come and visit you to your bed, and they give you money. You know, like you know,
Gotcha.
you
So it's like a
around-
coming
yeah,
of
They give
age.
you $10,
Basically
$20
a
and
passage,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know,
But now depends if your
Catholic
family
cul-de-sac.
invited a lot of people to the big party, so you make good money. Everybody gives you money, and usually that's how you end up buying a bike or buying stuff, expensive stuff that just as a kid. But usually parents take the money.
I'm laughing because we have pictures that his mother sent with us when we moved back here.
Yeah.
And he's in pajamas and his brother's in pajamas and his brother's looking proud and Amor just looks like he wants to kill everybody.
Well, I was a kid.
And then after that, like how many days is it? You stay in bed, they bring
3-4
everything to you
days,
that you
5
don't,
days,
yeah.
depends. And then you have this, after you stand up, they have this big ceremony party where you go there and you're like a king.
Yeah, and you have like a little shoebox that they put over that area so that the blankets don't rub against it and it's just,
It's a box or something.
it's a
That's
great
great.
journey
That's
through
great.
pictures.
And
Yeah.
you didn't tell that story last time, so I
Well,
appreciate that.
I told you. Like I said, I'm born and raised Muslim. You can call that, but we are not fanatic. Like this religion is between. For us, it's more nationality because we have more wars about nationality than religion. And now, due to the fact that we have 3 different religions and our nationality, it's like okay, we're gonna fight with each other if we don't. And through the history, we have leaders that they try to avoid that religion thing and getting the nationality together so we can survive, basically, because we were fighting through against some really hard enemies like Turkey, Osman Perandri, like you call, and then we fight with Serbs. They were all, they have Russian behind them, and they were really supportive by some strong countries. So we were small. We are small anyway, and they tried so much to eliminate us and eliminate our nationality, but they couldn't succeed. And through the history, they even tried with Turks. They took kids in the villages, for example, and they send the kids to Turkey and they train them and they bring them again in the same area to fight against those people, and they call them Yeniçer. They were Yeniçer soldiers. But basically, they were Albanians fighting against Albanians. And that's how this one of our leaders, the main one, George Kastrioti Skanderbeu. George Kastrioti is his real name. It's Catholic name, which he's born as a Catholic, and they changed it to Skanderbeu. Skanderbeu is a Muslim name that they give him he was like a officer, something with grades. He was a strong fighter. And when they came there, he remembers where he came from, and because he was in his teenage, and then they created their own Albanian army. Thank you. And that's how it all started, and he managed to get people together and fight against.
Sure. The Turks took him out, trained him, sent him back there expecting him to fight for them, and he formed an army and fought back, using the tactics they'd been teaching him for a good part of his life.
Yeah, but I mean,
Very interesting leader.
He's our leader and our symbol in every aspect right now. And like I said, we fight with many wars, and nationality is more important for us than anything else. So.
Most Albanian Muslims couldn't tell you the pillars of faith. They can't tell you. They know when Bayram is, but they can't tell you what it means.
It means that you get presents and you get money. So that's what it means. Most of the things like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because at the end I'd like to debrief a little bit and talk about shared common values. But I think a lot of those things are coming out here because we're talking about presents and gifts and, well, we'll come back to that idea. But go ahead.
Christmas.
Yeah. Rituals. So we'll open it up for questions because I'm sure you guys have lots of questions as we always do, and we can take off in any direction that you want to go from here.
You, how's your baby?
Oh, he's doing fine.
I got the right guy though, right?
Pardon me?
I'm asking the right guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can still have a baby when you're circumcised, though.
Well,
I'm
I
just
know,
David, how did your wife's family, being Lutheran, you said, react to you? And I mean, hopefully that was easy and they don't like not speak to you anymore.
Well, my wife's dad is not in the picture, so my mother-in-law has just been very open, and she's always taken the attitude of whatever is going to make her daughter happy is fine with her. So it was relatively easy on that front. She went to her mom and said, I'm going to convert to Judaism, and she said, okay. And it was relatively easy. That worked out pretty well for her. They, when we had our wedding, it was the first time that a majority of her family had been into a temple. And so we did try to be sensitive to that. We printed up a little program. We tried to explain some of the words that would be used, some of the traditions that were going to be a part of the ceremony, because we also have a lot of non-Jewish friends. So we wanted people to kind of understand what was happening. What was interesting was actually my family initially had a harder time with her. My mom was okay with my wife, but my grandmother was not a real big fan of my wife eventually, not because of anything about her, but just because she was a shiksa, which is a derogatory term for a non-Jewish female. And so my grandma's attitude was initially, she's a shiksa, and just kind of ignored her. Eventually it was like, she's okay for a shiksa. Eventually it was like, she's really nice, except she's a shiksa. And then eventually, shortly before my grandmother passed away, my wife did tell her that she was converting. My grandma was happy about that, but I think still kind of viewed my wife as a bit of an outsider because of that. For me personally, it's kind of interesting. I always think that someone who actually converts to a religion, to me, in a sense, that seems like they have a stronger faith.
Right.
I mean, they chose this for themselves. They potentially went against their family and chose it. So I feel like in a lot of ways, even though I've been Jewish longer and it's part of my heritage, I feel like in a lot of ways she is more Jewish than I am.
Right.
By that virtue. So her family was always very accepting of me being Jewish. They did have some questions. They wanted to know a little bit, but they were pretty open. That said, though, we still get Christmas cards. So make what you will of that.
Got a question?
We send Christmas cards because we know they celebrate Christmas, so I feel that's fair. It does still, honestly, it's not that it hurts me, but it does kind of surprise me still a little bit that for my mother-in-law and some other relatives that are a little closer that we still get the Christmas cards. My wife and I never say anything about it. Maybe that's part of it, and it's nice to be remembered and to get something. But having known, knowing that we're Jewish and we're raising our daughter Jewish and they were at our wedding, to me it seems like potentially they could have. And we do have some relatives on my wife's side that do send us Hanukkah cards, and I always think that's really nice, very aware of them. Yeah.
The whole stomping on the ground and crushing, what is it?
Yeah, it's part.
I always see it in movies like Meet the Fockers,
Mhm.
yeah, Meet the Parents and all that when they got married at the end.
It is part of the Jewish ceremony. You're supposed to step on a glass and break it. I had to do it twice because the first time I didn't stomp down hard enough, apparently. But it's meant as a noise, as a loud sound to kind of mark the fact that the celebration is to begin. I think that's my best understanding of
Alright, I was just always
behind it.
curious. I'm like, why did I always get to step on me?
Yeah,
Actually heard
it's part.
something yesterday about it, about some temple falling, and that's what it was supposed to signify or something. Heard it on like.
Sounds like we'll see this on the discussion board.
Then you can ask your wife, because she might know.
She's smart. Yeah, I wish she was here now.
Check your wedding program.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, I got a question for you. What's the religious view of life after death from the Jews' point of view?
That's a good question. With Judaism, we don't believe in reincarnation. We believe that the soul kind of lives on, in a sense, more so in the lives of those who are left behind, as opposed to going to a heaven or a hell. Those concepts are not part of Judaism.
So it's like there is no life after death, so to speak.
There is no life after death. There is no concept really of heaven or hell, but there is the concept of what you have done and the impressions that you've made on people, kind of your acts.
Right.
Who you were can live on in that sense.
That's neat. I didn't
Yeah,
really
that's
know that.
pretty sweet. I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's
I may convert some more people.
Yes,
I don't
you
know.
might.
I don't know.
why are Jewish people so against like body piercings and tattoos?
I have not heard that to be the case. You may have more information than me on that one. What have you heard?
I don't know. I was reading a book by a Jewish author, and her mom had a hissy fit when she came home with her nose pierced, and she said it was something about desecrating your body, and
Huh.
Do Muslims have any points of view on that? Do you know?
Well, I don't want to talk about Muslims because I don't really know
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
So I don't want to, talk about. But there are a lot of people with tattoos and stuff like that. It's nothing. I don't think that there is anything. Well, we do have a thing that, well, in Quran it says that if you can marry the women as much as you can afford, it's just. I'm just bringing that up like something that, it's just one of those things that, but nothing for ears or tattoos.
Can you guys talk real briefly, since we're touching on it right now, about your books? If we were talking about Christian Catholics, I would be talking about the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and what the difference between those are. But, from a Muslim faith, from a Jewish faith, from Holly, wherever you want to go with it.
Seventh-day Adventists go off the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. Bible is literal, word for word. It's not stories that represent things. It's
So it's a
what
literal
actually happened.
representation.
Adventists have a prophet named Ellen White, who lived, I want to say now, about 100 years ago. Who they believe her writings are also divinely inspired, and a lot of the teachings in the church are based on some of the things that she had to say. For instance, a lot of Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarian as a lifestyle because they believe in body health. Adventists don't believe in body piercings because they don't believe in wearing jewelry or makeup. It's part of that whole, that's vanity and spending money on things that, is unnecessary.
Are Seventh-day Adventists people who wear the skirts all the time?
No, no. It's not Amish, although sometimes it sounds like it.
It's like
Yeah, it's more about your body is God's temple. You should take care of yourself. You should live healthy. You should live clean. Nothing in excess. Not alcohol. Not certain kinds of meats. Depending how strict an Adventist you are. But pretty much it's a Christian faith. What makes Adventists slightly different is their belief that the biblical day of worship is Saturday. In the Old Testament, that was more true. So Seventh-day Adventists worship on Saturday and believe in keeping that Friday night to Saturday night holy. They actually have quite a lot in common with Jewish faith. What the difference between them, the biggest difference is, of course, the New Testament being part of Adventist tradition, where it's not with Judaism, to my understanding.
Yeah.
And then Catholics, it's Bible, it's saints, it's... My mother was in her 40s before she ever read a Bible. Not because she's a strict Catholic, but because it was beat into her head so much growing up that you're not meant to understand this. That's why you go to church. The fathers in church understand it, and you shouldn't try. And even now, as an older woman, she turned 60 in February, and she's maybe read Bible a handful of times in her life because of that lingering childhood belief about it.
What about the hair cutting thing? Is that something else too?
That's not something that Adventists just don't believe in being flashy.
That must be Scientologists.
Might be.
Not Scientologists.
There's some hair things with Judaism, isn't there?
In certain, there's different types of Judaism. There's Orthodox, which is kind of more heavy duty, and there's Reform, which is what I am. There's Conservative also. I'm just going to tell a funny story that you got me thinking of. We went on vacation last week. We stayed at a hotel, my wife, my 5.5-year-old daughter, and I. And my daughter is starting to read a little bit, and she opened up the little nightstand next to our bed. She pulls it out. She gets this black book. And we said, do you know what that is? She said, no. And we said, well, read what it says on the cover. She goes, Holy Bible? Like, you're very close, sweetie. Holy Bible. You're very close. Anyway, with Judaism, we have the Torah, which is the Old Testament, basically. It's, now I'm going to see if I still remember, Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, and Exodus. So those are the five books of the Torah. And the Torah, if you ever get a chance to see one, they're really, really beautiful to look at. They're these scrolls that I don't even know, honestly, how long they stretch. They're on these big wooden poles, usually, and there are 2 of them, and they roll the whole thing up. They're always handwritten, And they're absolutely beautiful to look at, and they sit in the temple. They're usually draped with a covering and very well protected behind an ark, basically kind of an armoire sort of thing, where they have a few different Torahs usually, but they're really beautiful to look at. So
what do you do if you want to read it at home? Is it read at home?
nope. You
Oh,
just find Torahs
just right
at
in
the
the
temple.
So it's kind of a blessed book that stays within the temple, and then the elders read from it during the service?
The rabbi typically does, and when Jewish boys become bar mitzvahed, or girls, either way, at the age of 13, they usually read a passage from it. They're usually pretty well trained at that point. They've been reading and practicing and practicing. It's each bar mitzvah gets a different section of the Torah to read, and so they practice that usually for at least a half year in advance, so they can do it accurately. But yeah, Torahs aren't in the home.
And
Are they
it's
all
not
the
in
same
English,
language?
is it? It's
Nope,
Yeah.
it's in Hebrew. Yeah, and they're very ornate. The writing is very beautiful to look at.
Is there anything besides the Quran with Muslims?
I don't know.
Any books, documents?
No, Quran is the one. That's the
Pretty much.
Holy Bible.
Okay.
It's
The
The
equivalent.
Holy Bible of Muslim is important, but is that kept in the home and you read it on your own?
Yeah, you have copies. You can have copies of that.
Yeah. And then is it interpreted individually, or do the...
Well, when you read Quran, you read like you're singing, because that's how it's meant. But if you don't know Arabic, you don't, because when they translate to the different languages, they lose the meaning because translation. So some of the people, they learn the Arabic so they can read really. But when you read the Quran, you read like you're singing it. That's how you read. It's not like a book where you can read.
Is that what the mullahs sing in the morning from the mosque?
Well, that's
Passages out of the Quran, or is
that's
it prayers?
the morning. Yeah, when the morning.
One of the things that's hardest for a foreigner to get used to living in a Muslim country is there are synagogues everywhere, and most of them have speakers posted at the top. And no matter where you live, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden it's through the whole city resonating, and it's
five times of pray when they pray.
singing prayers or singing passages out of it.
Yeah.
And the people inside the temple are now singing to the rest of it's broadcast out to the community?
No, only the.
Well, is it a mullah that sings?
Yeah, mullah.
It's like a priest or a pastor.
Yeah.
But the people inside the synagogue would also be singing. That just wouldn't be what would be broadcast. It'd be somebody like with a microphone kind of device.
Well, he sings to invite people to go to the mosque because the mosque is open. It's like a brand new day. It started, and this is the first time. Usually, when he sings, that people are just getting into the mosque to pray. So
Can you imitate it? Because mine was bad.
I don't know.
It's a really distinctive sound. Once you've heard it, you recognize immediately what it is.
It's loud and it's in the morning. So if you go out and the next morning you hear that.
Then it's like church bells. It's
exactly.
similar to for many of us, it's like the church bells pealing at 8 o'clock in the morning because early mass is going to start.
This is at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then it's at 7. It's 5 times a day.
Yeah.
I have a question for the whole panel. Actually, looking at all of your different books as they're written and prophecies as they're said, is there certain prophets or similarities in the way that, I guess you guys would have to talk to each other about that, or do any of you know, for instance, is there any history amongst all, say the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran that you can speak of?
Actually, the Quran, if I'm not mistaken, if it's not in the Quran, I know that there are Muslims that believe there was a man named Jesus and that he was a good man. They don't necessarily all believe he was the Son of God. I actually don't know if there's reference to him in the Quran or not, or if it's just in some of the Muslim
I don't know about that.
faith system. Yeah, there's a belief that he existed and might have been a good person. And there are a lot of similarities with Muhammad and Jesus in terms of their life and, them being the voice of God on earth kind of thing.
But the names are different.
Yeah. The prophets are different.
Yeah, the prophets. But
am I wrong to say Moses is represented in all the 3 texts?
Yeah,
Moses?
the Quran makes reference to some of the Old Testament books in the Bible. Yeah.
So there is Old Testament beliefs throughout all systems.
I think
Go ahead.
if I may, having studied some of the religions and having friends, I think the one thing in common is the sections of the Old Testament that you can find in each. Not necessarily word for word,
Or called the same thing,
or
but
called the
similar
same thing,
ideas.
but the similarities are there. And that, as far as I know, and from what I've seen, well, that's a big one right there.
And some guiding principles that are the same. You know, most of them have some version of do not kill, and at the same time, most of them have some version of it's okay to take revenge.
Which again comes from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
An eye for an eye stuff.
Yeah, it's that kind of dichotomous nature of God. Like on one hand, he loves you, but watch out, don't piss him off kind of stuff. That seems to be pretty consistent across the faith systems that I've experienced.
Would anybody else like to kind of throw some of their faith ideas and then go back and forth about how they're similar, how they're different? Because, I mean, we've been focusing on these faiths. Does somebody else have a faith that they'd like to kind of throw in
I can
here?
actually relate to the Holly. You say you're like, you kind of embrace everything, but obviously you don't have a strict one. I do the same thing as myself as well. My fiance right now, we're going to get married here in the next year, next April. Thank you. She's actually Baptist, and I myself, I've never baptized, nor do I know or claim anything or represent anything of the sort. But obviously my mother and father have some, are some religion. But again, I mean, at my house, it was just more or less, obviously sat there and prayed for dinner, gave thanks and that, but that was just at the end,
Family culture.
Pretty much, it was what was that said at home. Obviously, stayed there, or we embraced the heritage of it. But I mean, again, I don't have that set tradition of a certain specific religion, and it's kind of weird because we're getting closer to the wedding, and we actually chose to have a non-traditional wedding in a church and things of that sort. But we're actually going to be doing it out in Hawaii on the beach.
We're all coming, aren't we?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're tickets.
Yeah.
Did I see your hand up? Did you want to speak?
I had tons of questions, but as I put on the email before, in my faith, my belief, and I'm listening and stuff, and some things I get, I guess, offended. The things I don't, but I'm respecting and everything because I know God loves us all. And to say that, in this big old world, and I'm trying to get with this science thing, this evolution, it's just so much for me. I mean, it's a lot, And what I want to know is how can you take certain things out of the Bible and how do you pick and choose? What do you use for your faith or your religion? And just like you was talking about the Sabbath, we had the Sabbath. I think you said your Sabbath was Friday.
On Seventh Day.
Starts Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. That's what
Okay.
Seventh Day Adventists keep as their holy day.
And Judaism.
Okay, yeah. But you didn't say anything about Sabbath, right?
Nope, actually it is the same in Judaism. Yep, Friday to
okay.
sundown,
That's a
Saturday to
similarity.
sundown.
In fact, a lot of people think Seventh Day Adventist is synonymous with Jewish, which
Okay.
it's not in that it's Christian, which is a big difference. But yeah.
And something else you were saying there. And so what day do you, you go to church, right?
Temple.
The temple, and you go to, okay. And that's on what day?
Friday nights, typically. Some temples do have Saturday morning services, and then there's also Sunday school, which is religious education for my daughter.
Okay, now do you believe in Jesus Christ?
Mm-hmm. But I also believe in a lot of things.
Right.
And Dave's shaking his head yes.
It's
so
why I'm
tell us
here.
how the Jewish interpretation of Jesus' role is.
It kind of sounded a little bit similar to what you were saying. The Son of God, a very good man, but not the Savior, not coming back. And that's a difference, I think, between Judaism and Christianity. And tell me if I'm wrong. And so that's
Sure,
one of
a
the
good man
differences.
and possibly even a prophet, but not the Son of God necessarily. And with me, it was so weird growing up with my mom's side of the family Catholic and my dad's side of the family Adventist because there's so much difference between those faith systems alone. And my grandma was someone that converted to Catholicism late in life. So, you know, she was a, you know, you must believe this or you're going to die and burn and go to hell, and you're 5 years old going, okay, great, so you're telling me that my father who I love is going to hell, and good, okay, there's no salvation for any of us. Yay, thanks, Grandma. You know, it's
How about those cookies?
kind of a bit touchy there. But, you know, when I'm down in Kentucky, my brother is married to a woman who's Baptist from Kentucky, and, you know, Wednesday nights when I'm down there, they go to church, I go to church with them. I go to church with my dad on Saturdays when I have time off and can go. If I go to church with my mom, it might be a Sunday night mass, it might be a holiday mass. It's more a respect for their beliefs and a willingness to participate on some level in some kind of organized faith system. But for me, I've been exposed to so many different things, not just the cultures I lived in, but in Kosovo and Albania, I lived with people from all over the world. And I just got to a point where it's like, how can anyone say that any one thing is right when there's so many things out there that contradict? You know, people say, okay, the Bible, how can you not believe the Bible? Well, maybe you believe these texts over here that show discrepancies in the Bible or things that aren't consistent across the books of the Bible. So do you give these, you know, holy relic documents the precedence, or do you give this, you know, it's, for me, it would just be so hard for me to say this one thing is absolutely right when there's so much out there that's potentially right, that I haven't ever had the blessing of that certainty where it's like, you know, I just know it. And sometimes I wish that was the case. I wish I'd been raised by parents that thought the same thing, told me this is the one way to look at it and that's it. Because I've never had that surety about whatever faith system I participated in.
Let me answer your question also, because I think it's true probably for all of us in the room that we don't necessarily adhere to every single word that's within our part of our religion. I think we all interpret things a little bit differently, and so you got me thinking even about the Sabbath. In Judaism, it's supposed to be the day of rest. You're not supposed to do any work Friday sundown, Saturday sundown. I do some work on Saturday despite that. And so that's something that I'm not as adherent to. There are other things that I am, and again, I could be wrong. My guess is it's probably the same for a lot of us in here, that, you know, what we do, we have a religious belief, and then we kind of adapt it to, I guess, what's going to fit and work and mesh with our own beliefs. And again, that's what I would guess.
As I was concerned, like you said, being raised and upbringing on Sabbath, you rest, same thing. But as I got older, I realized if I need to go into an emergency, you know, the hospital is open on Sunday, well, I'm not going to wait till Monday to go. And I appreciate the doctors working and nurses there. So I went to thinking, you know, on my own, I mean, you have to use a little bit of common sense as well to fit. I think with the Sabbath, it's like house chores and stuff like that. That's my perception. House chores, things that you say, oh, I'm tired today, I'm not going to go church or whatever day you know, go to the temple, whatever. I'm going to put it off on this day and not go to do this and do that. You know, that's the way I always looked at it. But if I have to go to work, because I also know in the scripture that if you don't labor, you shouldn't eat. You know what I'm saying? So some people have to work on Sunday.
I think some of you probably remember when Joe Lieberman was Al Gore's running mate. He said at that time, even though he's a practicing Jew and he believed in the day of rest for the Sabbath, he said, if there are things I need to attend to as the vice president of this country, I will. And I'll put that before my religion. And he did get some flack from Jews for taking that stance. But, I mean, that's a good place, though, where sometimes the values that we have may clash with one another.
Right.
I've been a social worker 18 years. You know, I have a client that calls up and they're tripped out on crack and, you know, need to go to the emergency room. And I can be like, well, okay, can we reschedule because it's my day of rest. You know, it's, yeah.
Or the people that I go to church with that strongly believe about their Sabbath day, but then you go at the church, you go out to eat. And when you go out to eat,
that's making someone else work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody else is serving you. So, you know, I like to say you have to use a little common sense, whatever. And I think the other thing I wanted to ask was, it's just a big controversy with religion, I'm telling you. But when you said that, you know, you felt that Jesus Christ was someone of importance, but he wasn't the Savior. And so, do you guys say that there is a Savior, or you don't? I mean,
I guess a lot of it in Judaism kind of goes back to personal responsibility, rather than, you know, saying that someone else is going to save us. It's, in the eyes of many Jews, it's more about the good deeds that we do for ourselves. It's about the choices that we make. We do have a day of atonement, once a year, which
Yeah, it's just
maybe we
awesome.
need that more frequently. I don't know. The Catholics obviously, go to confession, but we have a Day of Atonement, but we're believed to be responsible for our own actions, and if we have problems that we need to make changes in our life for the better. God is watching us, and we have to kind of view our own actions as well. So that, I guess that may be a little bit of a difference between, or a big difference between the religions.
And so you believe in God?
Yes. And
but
Jesus.
not- and
That
Jesus.
there is Jesus Christ, but not that we pray to Jesus. And that's, again, one of the differences.
And what about the Holy Spirit?
No.
Adventists, yes. Catholics, yes. Adventists, for instance, don't pray to Mary because there's nothing in the Bible that says anything about praying to Mary, so Adventists don't. Catholics, of course, completely different belief system, even some different versions of the Bible and different biblical texts. So my mother's family, completely different idea about it.
Because they have like, Catholics, am I right, they have like 9 books of kings in their Bible.
Something about that.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I've seen some versions of Catholic Bibles. I'm not familiar
No,
with
there's
that particular
not.
one.
There's most Catholic churches right now that I'm aware of use the King James version.
Mhm.
It used to be different. I know when my mom went to school, there was 9 books.
Yep.
Okay.
But it depends on, here again, you got your strict, reform, it depends on that sector. And I know a lot about the Catholic religion because I'm Baptist and went to a Catholic college, so
Okay. Okay.
talking about some culture shock,
Yeah.
you know. And
We won't
so we
forget
had to study some of their beliefs.
And it's interesting because I just heard on NPR yesterday a religious theologian who was, what was his? He was brought up one way, and after studying, he was a strict fundamentalist Baptist. And after studying religion at a strict fundamentalist Baptist school, he started to see the issues, the discrepancies, the problems, and then he decided as a person himself that he wanted to pursue that more. And so he delved deeply into these areas, and now he was on NPR saying, from all of my research and all of the work that I've done through my entire life to fully understand, I now realize that, a fundamental belief in the Bible just doesn't make sense when we talk about all the different ways that the Bible has been transcribed and translated over the years. And his main point was that the King James version of the Bible, there's something in there that is totally, absolutely wrong in where it came from and how it got put in there. Even the theologians can't figure out where it came from and how it got put in there. And I can't remember exactly what it was. Did anybody else hear that?
It's like
yesterday?
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
It's like Wikipedia.
Yeah, sort of. Only it's worse than that.
I've heard about it. Like I went to the thing out in Grand Rapids for the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that was part of their presentation, is saying that there was a part that was wrong. What I wanted to add is, a lot like Holly, we had some family issues. I was raised strict Catholic until I was 5 years old. Then my mom converted to Lutheranism, which is
Interesting. Go ahead, you're going to fill people
Even a
in.
little bit more of a departure than Adventism.
Yeah.
But fill
It's like a
people in,
step
because I'm
further.
sure most people don't
Wiccan.
understand what you're...
it deals with what typically would be called witchcraft.
Right.
It's the celebration of nature.
Right. Witchcraft
believe in
is
God
a celebration
and a
of nature,
goddess.
not.
A god and a goddess. The goddess is the primary one that you pray to, and the god goes through a cycle of life, which is the seasons. My mom converted when I was about 7 or 8. My dad was still a strict Catholic, and it clashed horribly. So now I consider myself an agnostic. I'm currently doing a lot of research on different religions. I'm looking into Buddhism right now. Basically, I agree that, who am I to say what is right and what is wrong? I don't think that,
For anybody but myself.
Yes, exactly. And I look back on my Catholic upbringing. I went to a Catholic school for many, many years, and I look back on that, and I look at portions of the Bible, and it says, like, don't judge. Well, when we say our religion is right, that's what we have to do. That's what we're doing. We're judging
Or,
other people.
the Old Testament, don't judge, but go kill off this group of people because they don't believe in
Or
me.
and one thing that still
It's really weird.
puzzles me to this day is the Bible says don't call anyone father, but God and your biological father. But what do we call a Catholic priest? I don't, that's something, like, I look back on those kind of discrepancies.
And in Albanian language, the words for God and for Mr. are a slight inflection different.
God and Mr.
God and Mr.
You
are
guys-
basically the same word.
See what I did earlier today? But anyways, we're gonna, I think we had 2 questions here. You were, okay.
Well, I grew up in a Catholic church and, you know, went to Catholic school until I was 12, until middle school, and then my parents decided to put me in a public school, and then my parents decided we were gonna be Assembly of God, so which is very, very strict, and women have to wear long sleeves and really long skirts, they can't put their hair, and it's basically they talk for those words. So I know it, you know, because there's a lot of, when I grew up and I didn't know where my place was, because I was just like, well, I don't know if I want to be a Catholic or if I want to, you know, go into the Assembly of God. My question to Dave is, in the Judaism practice, I know that Saturday or Friday, Saturday is a day of worship for that religion. Isn't it also that, I don't know if it's true or not, can they shop, can they do anything like that, or they just basically stay home and go to Bible
It
service?
kind of depends a bit in terms of whether you're Orthodox Jew or conservative or Reform. For Orthodox Jews, though, typically they will not drive a car. They will not they will not use anything that even uses electricity. So it means they walk to temple. They won't turn on lights. And even some very basic things. They won't cook a meal. Now, they may prepare one in advance, so they have something to eat at that time. And for those of you who are familiar with the Amigo carts, like the, you know, for those who are handicapped, for Orthodox Jews, they wouldn't use one of those either. And so they have some, and I forget how they operate, but they were able to get around the notion of actually pushing a button to turn it on. So for the Orthodox Jews, they take that very, very seriously. As far as not working and not doing any household chores and not using electricity and all that.
The
And so
basic
for Orthodox
concept is a
Jews,
special day.
yeah, for Orthodox Jews, then what that means is that they have to move to a town where they can walk to their temple. It's got to be close.
Wow. I've actually seen that, and I've heard about it, and I've just never had the chance to ask or, to.
Yes.
How many Orthodox Jews do you think we have in our country today?
I don't know. Personally, I don't know any. I know just a couple of people who have ever kept kosher. And for those of you who know something about that, it's very strict dietary requirements. And one of the big ones that's kind of interesting is that you can't eat meat with dairy in the same meal. And I won't get into all the details on why, but you're also supposed to have separate dishes for meats and for cheeses and so on. So I've just known a couple of people who keep kosher, but I haven't really known anyone who is Orthodox.
And there's some biological reasons why that's not such a bad idea, and became part of the whole belief system from way back when people didn't understand the biology behind why they were doing this, but it was a good idea. So
you're not supposed to eat an animal and an animal byproduct, and
Right.
that's kind of the short version of the philosophy behind it.
We're going to go to Todd, then we'll come back over here. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, right before you brought up the NPR, the guy that was on NPR. Well, PBS ran a whole series on the missing Gospels. I don't know if anybody's seen it.
I heard about it though.
Well, the church, the Bible we see today is, like you said, it's highly edited, and the church basically they didn't approve of women having any significant role. So anything they didn't like there had to go. So between the missing Gospels and the ones that were tossed out, the Bible you're reading today is edited and abridged, if you will, the way they wanted it. So the fundamentalists, I don't know how they can follow that literally, knowing that it's been adulterated like that.
That's the point that this guy who, has done years and years of research, it was trying to make. But that also came out in the Da Vinci Code, which made that so controversial. I mean, some of what you're saying, even though the Da Vinci Code was well researched, but it's not a...
It's still fiction.
It's still sensationalized.
Well, there was even a gospel supposedly written by Mary that was found. It's not included in the Bible.
And the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail actually is more realistic than what the Da Vinci Code is. But
Meaning fact-based and not
fact-based,
fictionalized and sensationalized.
Yeah.
Or you look at a book like The Red Tent,
Yeah.
which talks
It's
about
amazing book.
women's culture in that time and how it was more of a matriarchal society than most people credit it with being. But that's the part of the story that doesn't get told.
Because the men didn't want it in there.
Because,
Yeah.
because the church. at
Well,
the time
it's
was ran
the
by
same way that
men.
when people hear Wiccan, they think, Macbeth's three witches around a
Or-
cauldron with warts
No,
and long hair,
the
instead of
craft.
thinking more like it has more in common with a lot of Native American traditions, for
Yes, it
instance.
does.
A lot of First Nation stuff about respect for nature and,
The cycles of life with
Yeah.
winter, spring, summer. And a lot of people, The Craft, that was a horrible, horrible movie for anyone to understand what witchcraft is even about. I hear so many
Yeah.
misconceptions that it's.
yeah, it's not Dungeons and Dragons, it's something different.
Who's got another, Donna, you had a question, didn't you, for?
Well, it's kind of a comment, maybe
Okay.
a question. And I hear a lot today about I was this and then I became this. Or, someone converted to this. And I and my husband now have, Nick is Catholic since the day he was born. I was raised Pentecostal, so we were doing the whole dancing, praying in tongues. And I was raised until maybe I was 13, and then I kind of went to a different church, a Methodist church, and then I found I was in a non-denominational church, and then I met Nick, and now I go to a Wesleyan church, but we're actually raising our daughter literally by faithful. In that, one
Or multi-faithful, or what?
yeah, one Sunday we go to mass, and then the next Sunday we go to my church, and then the next Sunday we go to mass. And even when we were married by a priest in a Quaker temple. And so we've done everything all along to actually appreciate each faith. And so I guess I'm curious whether or not it ever occurred to people to do both and appreciate both and think that both are good.
Oh, absolutely. I was raised with both. We went to church with my mom, we went to church with my dad. I was sprinkled when I was a baby, I was dipped when I was about 10, we were raised to respect the tradition aspect of it in both our families without ever being raised to think that one was absolutely right. We were raised to have a respect for the idea of religion and the benefits and some of the teachings in both the faith system. I think it's absolutely possible to do that.
And even though we are raising my daughter Jewish, obviously, we still spend a lot of time with my mother-in-law, and so my daughter knows that on Christmas Day at Grandma's house she's going to open a lot of presents, and sometimes we do go to church with my mother-in-law on Christmas Day. I think it's a really pretty ceremony, and really it's a nice service. So I like going to that actually. My mother-in-law will celebrate Easter for my daughter, and so she'll get an Easter basket, and so my daughter definitely gets some of the Christian faith as well.
Sure. And we talk Albanian to our daughter, and there are things that Amor does, like when she gets up in the morning, he lifts her up and prays in Albanian, which is something his generations and generations of his family do. That's part of both his faith system and just being Albanian.
I think a lot of time when people convert, it's just the thought is that when we're younger, a lot of times religion is so forced on us, especially in the Catholic religion. You had to get up and go to Sunday school 3 times, not only religion school 3 times a week, and then we had mass in school. It was so forced on us that I can see why sometimes it's unappealing once you're old enough to make your own decision. And sometimes, in my mom's case, my mom was ill, they gave her last rites, my little brother had just been born, and because she was not able to attend church for 3 weeks, they would not baptize my little brother. So in my mom's case, that was very unappealing and sent her the opposite way. It did not fit her needs at that time. And I think that's what spirituality is all about, finding something that fits your needs.
That's exactly what I said earlier. And I had a similar experience. Like I said, for me, after having gone to temple school and Sunday school and being forced to do so, I drifted away when I could.
I think those are all good points, and we're gonna have to bring this to a close. And we'll, you know, if you guys can stick around afterwards, we can entertain more questions and put them up on the discussion board. And I would please encourage everybody to share their faith with all of us, because I'm certainly interested in learning so much about world religions. And there's just not enough opportunities and enough books that you could possibly read to do that.
Or
And
enough
so,
time to read all
you know,
this.
right. So please do that. What I want to close with is this idea. We're talking about meeting your needs, you know, at a deeper level. Meeting our needs over here at this end of the continuum with things that we can't test and observe. And, you know, it's not about evidence, it's about feeling, it's about faith, it's about belief, it's about, you know, dogma in some cases. But what is that need? What is that need that all humans have to be able to do this and that? What's the need of religion and faith and spirituality about? And is religion the same as spirituality? So what do we think about that? What do you think about that? What's this need about? Am I picking on you? Jerry doesn't mind if I pick on her. Jerry, you've been to a religious college. You were brought up a different way. What do you think this fundamental shared common value need as human beings that we have, you know, is all about?
I can't speak for everyone. You know, I did go to a Catholic college. I went because they offered me a full ride. Did I convert? Did I ever think about converting? No, as a matter of fact, I left them with some ideals of mine. Because I was born Baptist, I was raised Baptist, and I am Baptist. And you talk about staying in church. No one stays in church like Black Baptists. You know, we have Sunday school, Wednesday service, Thursday service, youth group, choir rehearsal, you know, so on and on and on and on and on.
The Baptist church over there off what? Isn't that Hermansaw right there?
Huh?
Isn't that a Baptist church right there?
I'm from Bay City, so I go to Second Baptist.
I know
But the average Baptist, Black Baptist church is basically the same. You know, what the need? The need is different, you know. Religion and spirituality isn't one and the same. I think that depends on the person. You know, my religion and my spirituality are connected. It's who I am. It serves my need in being brought up in beliefs. It helps instill my values, my morals. So I yes, I'm very tied to it. But I'm also very open to listen to what someone else says, and I can respect someone else's religion. I'm not going to try to change their minds, and I can guarantee you at my age, you can't change my mind.
Do you feel it's deeply into community and self?
In the Black community, at one time, and you have to remember, as African Americans at one time, the only time we had community was worship.
Right.
During slavery time, if it was not that day of worship, there was no community, because the masters made sure of that, because they wanted to keep people separated. So yes, it is that sense of community, and very deep rooted. It was survival. It was a way of communicating that they did not have before, and still in the church that I'm associated with, all those things are based on that. It's the community, it's the ability to get along, to come together. And like I said, one of the most segregated days in America is the day of worship.